Hello, David. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Kino, the co host, was here a moment ago, but he's in South Africa, and everywhere there can be technological problems. And hopefully, he's going to be rejoining us. And if not, we're going to have our conversation. So I'd
Absolutely.
like to welcome David Russell Shamzad. And am I saying your name correctly?
That was pretty good for the first try, I gotta say. Shamzad.
Okay, say it
Shamzad.
again.
Shamzad.
Shamzad.
Hmm.
And you are a real estate CEO, industry leader, and a writer who
Hmm.
spent more than a decade battling mental illness and addiction to drugs and alcohol. And during your early 20s, your still undiagnosed and untreated mania and depression triggered suicidality and psychiatric hospitalization. And for the next decade, you fought to regain and maintain your mental health, recovery from addiction, and to overcome the stigma that stands in the way of self care. Through determination, treatment, radical personal changes, and support from your community, your life transformed into one of mental health well being, sobriety, positive self belief, and success. And you're the author of the harrowing memoir, I Am Someone You Know. So, welcome, David, very much to Talking Back to Suicide, and welcome, Kino, who has returned.
He's back. Hey,
Apologies.
Kino.
Apologies.
That's
Technology, what can I say? What can I say? Hi, David. Nice to meet you.
It was nice to meet you too. Glad to have you back.
so, David, start anywhere in your life.
Okay.
I'm sure we're going to go in many directions, but
Yeah.
you
Well,
choose
first
where
of
to
all,
begin.
thank you for that introduction. That was an amazing intro. Did you write that? Who wrote that? That was good.
Part of that was from your website, and I
Okay.
rearranged and added some words as well.
Okay. Yeah, I recognize some of them. I'm like, no, I think you crafted some of this. It sounded original and fantastic. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you guys having me on. And yeah, that's it. Like what you said right there, it encapsulates kind of the last 20 years of my life. And maybe that's maybe a good place to start is kind of at the beginning. So yeah, you mentioned undiagnosed mental illness. That's probably the place to begin. Um, when I was in college, I had a normal enough kind of high school. Experience and did pretty well and kind of eventually followed a college track and got into a good school here in the States. And um, yeah, things kind of started like a normal college freshman. Um, and sometime around like, I'll say my second year, so sophomore year, things just started to change, in my head, the way I was feeling, the way I was thinking. Um, and I'm like, okay, this isn't waking up on the wrong side of bed kind of thing. This is something of heavier with a lot more gravity to it. And I started having these just a couple days at a time where it was like I couldn't even talk to somebody. I couldn't, it felt like I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of bed and I couldn't have a conversation with you or you. Um, it became that daunting to just kind of do like normal things. Um, and then but it would pass. And, maybe a week later, I might feel that again, or be the total opposite. And I would feel I couldn't stop talking. I couldn't, was talking so fast, you couldn't shut me up. And I was having a ton of fun staying up all night. Um, and this went on for a while. Um, and during those periods that I mentioned where I was really, really depressed, feeling like frozen, um, the only way that I really found an outlet, it's just through drinking. That was sort of the pathway to feeling like, okay, it's normal or at least comfortable enough to sort of go out and function. So that was sort of my um, release valve a bit. Um, I didn't know I was self-medicating. That terminology, that idea wasn't like familiar to me, but that's essentially what I was doing. Um, and I maintained that for a few years, and then I got out of college. So I'm like 22, 23. I'm in my first job, and go figure, things got worse, not better, right? So those episodes got far worse, to the point where I would just wake up within a couple minutes, just break down in tears, just completely unaware or sort of unable to think about how I could proceed and get out of bed and brush my teeth. Like these things seemed impossible during these episodes. And then the periods of mania when those got much more extreme too. Um, so I'd be staying up on minimal sleep for a week or 2 weeks at a time, uh, partying and drinking like I'd never even done in college, like much, much, much worse. Um, and eventually, around the time I was, this is probably 24, 25, the episodes got so intense that I had been, let's see, I'd been off work for a couple days. And the first day I was off, I was like, all this energy, like an amount of energy that I couldn't contain. I was so happy. Like they use the term associated with bipolar disorder. They use euphoria. That's exactly what it felt like. I thought I was like a king or something. I felt so good. So I decided I always did a little fitness stuff, right? I rode crew in college, so that was always kind of the exercise is always the thing I did when I had a lot of energy. So I decided I was gonna go for a 50-mile bike ride. And I didn't ride my bike a lot. This wasn't like a thing I was used to doing. I just like thought in my head I could do it. And then I finished that and I'm gonna go run. I'm gonna go to the track and run as fast as I can. I'm gonna go do a 5-minute mile. Um, Also like things that I didn't really do. And it was like I had superpower that day. Um, Felt like best day ever. And then I woke up, went to bed, felt like I'd finally got all my energy out. I went to bed and woke up on the couch. Within 30 seconds, I believed my whole heart and mind that this was the worst day of my life and that I would never feel better again. And thought that thought that I didn't want to go on living at all. That living like the way I was feeling um, would just be impossible. I was in tears. Um, I was looking for somebody at my workplace who could help. Um, there's a counselor. I worked with kids actually, so we worked with kids in the juvenile justice system and foster kids. So there was actually a counselor, like a psychologist, that worked there. Um, my boss saw me just in tears, unable to talk, and he went and found a counselor. Um, but I told him, hey, I can't wait around. So I kind of wandered off, and we just had a knife on us because we worked in an outdoor therapeutic setting. So it was like wilderness therapy, and so we always had a knife on us for cutting lashings or whatever. And yeah, I ended up in like kind of alone in the woods, and I was convinced that the only thing for me was to cut my wrists open, and that would be the only way I could ever feel better. Is just letting letting all the pain leave in a stream of blood that made sense to me. Um, while I was on my knees and had this knife against my wrist, that counselor I mentioned, the psychologist, his name was Mike, ran up behind me and tackled me to the ground. And he held me like a bear hug from behind. Um, and then everything faded to black, and I just passed out in his arms. And I woke up at a psychiatric hospital in Rhode Island. I stayed there for 2 weeks, and over the course of that 2 weeks and talking with doctors, um, they said, "Hey, you like most likely been suffering from bipolar disorder. That explains the uh, alternating phases of mania and depression that you've been feeling." Um, and they put me on some heavy medication. I was like a zombie in there. I mean, they had me on antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, antidepressants, kind of just I was catatonic, they just to ensure my safety. Um, and yeah, I was there for 2 weeks. And they talked about bipolar disorder. They talked about dual diagnosis, which is substance abuse disorder and mental illness, because those two have such a dangerous interplay with each other, right? Um, and when I got out, believe it or not, I didn't tell a soul. I didn't tell anybody about this. Didn't tell my parents. I didn't want this name of an illness or this sign of what I thought at the time to be something that indicated like a weakness or something broken or wrong with me. Um, and so I went back to what I was doing before, and I took my pills, and I was on this regimen of mood stabilizers and antidepressants. But I just kept drinking and kept using drugs and kept this illness to myself for about another 10 years, just about. Um, until I was about 30 years old. And by then, I was drinking so much and so out of control that nearly died a few times, went to jail several times, for violence, for fighting. Um, and eventually, after waking up one morning, like a lot of other mornings, I was beaten up. I had blood all over me. No idea how. No idea at all. Still don't know to this day what the hell happened to me that night. But I realized I had drove my car home, so I found my car keys and they're covered in blood, and I just had this feeling like, oh man, like, what did I do? What's going on? So I'm running around my neighborhood looking to see if I actually had my car, because I didn't have a shred of memory that I had driven my car. And I finally find it. There's blood on the car inside. um, I was terrifying. I was wondering, like, did I kill someone? Did I just run someone off the road? And I had um, finally, after years and years and years of putting myself and my girlfriend and my friends in danger, I f- it I finally realized, like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die, or somebody else is. This doesn't continue at this rate without running into a brick wall, kind of figuratively or literally. Um, and that night, that was the last time I ever had a drink, actually. Um, and about 14 years ago. And that marked the beginning of a new chapter where was sober and um, started to unwind and extricate myself from this long period of self-destruction, not telling anybody that I had a mental illness, um, not taking care of it or treating myself, making it worse through just constantly mixing drugs and alcohol with it. Um, and that's a good stopping point. That's about 13 years ago, and that's the day my life began for the second time.
Wow.
Wow. David,
Just a quick
um,
little summary. That's
but wow. Yeah, I want to say that I too had a technological problem. All of a sudden, my computer shut down, and then I had to get on again. So I apologize for that.
I'm
I
the
know.
last man standing here. I might be next. I don't
I
know.
know.
That's the
That
beauty of
the
having two hosts on the show, you know.
That's right. That's right.
That's the
I'm gonna, as long
beauty
as
of
I'm
it.
with
When
one of
you're
you
doing a
guys, I
solo,
feel good.
yeah,
the
yeah.
last thing I heard was you were in the hospital. That the psychologist worker at the camp had rescued you. You blacked out.
Mhm.
You're in the hospital. Could you say as a quick summary, you're in the
You missed all the
hospital.
fun stuff. You missed the whole fun part.
Yeah. And you were there for 2 weeks. That was the last thing I heard. And then I heard the part now about driving the car and wondering
Yeah.
if you might have killed someone, which you
Okay.
didn't. But
So
so what?
from where
Repeat that part. Yeah.
so from where your computer shut off to where you
Yeah.
picked up, there's
Yeah.
about 10 years there. And
Okay.
I could summarize those 10 years quickly by saying I had this illness. I did not tell hardly anybody.
Did
My
so?
girl,
Did they diagnose you and say you have bipolar one disorder?
they did, and they gave me medication. They started me on mood stabilizers, and
Could you say
um,
which? I'm a psychiatrist myself. Which medication were you initially prescribed?
they prescribed me Lamictal, which is lamotrigine, along with an antidepressant, sertraline.
Okay.
Um, in addition to that, for I don't remember how long, but they also had me taking an antipsychotic, um, which I think was Risperdal, if you know that one. Um,
Mhm.
and I stopped taking that pretty quickly because I couldn't even move. Like you're on Risperdal, you're probably not going to harm yourself, but you're also half asleep, kind of a walking. I, I I thought of myself as a zombie, like I really couldn't move. Um, the medicine of choice really for those next 10 years, while I kind of kept this secret tucked inside me, where only my girlfriend knew, and like maybe a couple very close, very close friends, like two. I didn't even tell my parents. My medication was alcohol. That was the medicine for me. um, I did keep taking I'm still on lamotrigine and sertraline now. um, I did usually took those, most days, and I kind of knew like, okay, I don't want to have an episode like the one I had again. And if these keep me like sort of in those safe boundaries, great, I'll keep taking them. But um, there was no therapy, there was no self-care, there was no real treatment outside of that. Um, and so, yeah, for 10 years, Diane, it was living back in San Francisco. We moved here from Rhode Island, and I just the drinking got worse and worse and worse. The way I behaved when I was drinking too, whether it was the illness or the medication. I mean, I was volatile. It wasn't like a happy, cheerful drunk. It was violent. It was full of rage. It was very dangerous. Got into a lot of fights. Got arrested and 3 times and put in jail. Got my ass kicked a whole bunch of times by just people, police, bouncers. Was really lucky that I survived those 10 years. That whole period, I know if it had kept going past that last day, um, there's no way I'm here now. There's no way I'm on this earth right now if I hadn't stopped. I'm very sure that um, my girlfriend was on the verge of leaving me. I mean, she really loved me, still does. All these years later, we're actually married now, which we can kind of like get to at some point in the conversation when we're talking about the power of community and loved ones and all this. But she couldn't keep watching this anymore. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't still be here um, if I hadn't stopped drinking. I'm sure of that.
And the last thing you would mention about driving the car, was that related to being on an alcohol binge?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, driving drunk wasn't something that was unfamiliar. I mean, I honestly did it countless times. I'm so sad to say, and myself and the people in my path are. I'm just so lucky I never heard anybody doing it. Which is like, when you're sick and when you're addicted, I mean, you can convince yourself to do like anything, and you come to believe whatever you need to believe to get from one day to the next and continue abusing. Um, so it took that night and like finding myself with the blood all over me, realizing, I had driven my car across the city. It's like, usually when you black out, you're like, it's kind of a euphemism, right? Like you black out, but you kind of remember like a sight or a sound or like where you got some food or like these little bits and pieces. And then you're like, "Oh, okay, I'm stitching my night back together. I can remember." But I was drinking so much that you start blacking out so easily. Like your memory just completely falls apart. And then that night, I could not remember a single thing. I remembered having a cigarette outside a bar at like 1 in the morning and then nothing. And over the course of the next 5 hours, I got my ass kicked. I don't know what happened because I woke up just battered with bruises all over me, um, and cut, and no idea how. Still don't know. No clue whatsoever. And that was really the first time that had ever happened where I couldn't even remember getting in my car. So to find that, to find my car in the morning and realize I had driven, across San Francisco. I'm not on a desolate road. I mean, I'm driving on a Saturday night or whatever through crowds and crowds of people, I'm sure. Um, so to realize, like, for the first time, finally understand what I should have understood much sooner was like, I'm not going to just take myself down. Like, I'm going to destroy someone else's world. It's not going to be just me. It's going to be a stranger. It's going to be my girlfriend. It's going to be a friend. I'm going to really hurt people. Um, I was in such bad shape at that time that I had sort of felt I was hanging on the ledge with one finger, and I had a feeling that I just had a feeling that I wasn't going to make it, and I was sort of resigned to just drinking every night. I knew alcohol wouldn't leave me. I knew alcohol could be there for me, and I just was sort of starting to feel like I can drift off out of this community and society with whiskey in one hand, and I would be okay. And if I died, I died. Um, and I was sort of resigned to that. But once I realized it's not just going to be me, I'm going to really hurt people, in the most serious ways. That's what it took. Um, and then, like, the next day, um, I checked into an inpatient rehab, the chemical dependency recovery program, through one of the hospitals out here in the Bay Area. And my girlfriend, took me there and checked me in. And I met a counselor. So this is like 2 days later. I met a counselor there, an amazing clinical psychologist, and she worked with a ton of people with substance abuse and with mental illness as well. And I showed up and I'm like still bruised and all kind of fucked up. And I told her what had happened a few days before and the entirety of the last 10 years and what that looked like. And she looked at me straight in the eyes. I swear to God, she told me, and I just met this woman. She told me straight up, she said, "You're gonna die." She just looked at me square in the eyes and said, "You're not gonna survive, you're gonna die." And I mean, I guess it was obvious, but to hear someone say that, yeah, it scared me as much as I something needed to scare me. And she did. And not only did she make that so apparent to me, somehow after all these years, she left me she left me after that meeting feeling like that I could finally do something about it. And she said, "You need to give yourself a month. Don't worry about the future beyond that. Don't. I'm not talking about this life change. You just need to give yourself a month dry. You need to not drink for a month." And I don't know. I just thought I'm driving back, from meeting with her, and I'm just thinking about like, okay, well, today's day one. Maybe I could do day two, maybe three. And I started realizing like, okay, I can do this. I can do 30 days. Um, and that was the beginning.
David, was it an inpatient program or residential?
No, no. It was outpatient,
It
so
was outpatient.
yeah, and it
Yeah.
lasted, I think, I think it was about 6 weeks, where I
Oh,
saw her every couple days, and then went to groups every other day or so.
all the more to say of your fierce determination to get well, because it could have been so easy as an outpatient not to continue in the program.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, and it's not like that was the first time it ever occurred to me I needed to slow down or
Yeah.
cut back. I had tried many, many times over those 10 years to like say, okay, I'm not going to have any more than 10 drinks in a night, which is a shitload of drinks. I know that, but at the time that was moderating, and but I just could never do it. I mean, it would last, and I write about this. It lasted. It could last a few weeks and maybe even a couple months where I was like managing to keep, 6 drinks as a limit or something like that. And that was enough to not get me in trouble. It hurt, really crashing out. But it just never sustained. Um, and, as soon as things got bad again, mentally, and I felt myself slipping into a really dark, depressed space, I was like, fuck it, I need to drink. So I'm going to drink as much as I want. And I'm not going to count and I'm not going to care. Um, and if the place I'm at doesn't have any alcohol, I'll leave and I'll go find more. I mean, it was, I didn't drink to have fun. I drank to outrun pain entirely. And so when you're drinking like that, you're not thinking about other people or what you're doing or what event you're at and how much it's appropriate to drink at that dinner party. You just have you have one track mind, and it's just I need to I need to outrun this pain, and the only way to do that is just to drink until I'm unconscious. That was drinking to me. Drinking was not. It wasn't an interface of drinks in an activity. It wasn't okay. I'm going to a Super Bowl party, football or whatever. Here's how many drinks you have at that. Um, Drinking was entirely different. It was the pursuit of just drinking until I was unconscious. That was what drinking was. Um, so what I did that I had not done before. So you mentioned like yeah, it'd be very easy to slip back, right? Yeah, I've done it a million times, so no doubt about it. So at some point in the first week, um, the first week of the program, and she didn't tell me to do this. I just had this thought when I was driving back from a meeting with her. I'm like, I'm gonna I'm gonna tell everyone I know. And I mean, everyone already knew, right? Like it's not like it was a secret. And a lot of people had already kind of moved away from me because I was fucking dangerous. Like, I mentioned going to jail a few times. Like one of those times I got my friend locked up too, just for being with me. And fortunately, like, he rolled with it and he didn't get hurt in there. But this traumatic, right? Like that's you go out with your friend, you're not planning on just going to jail with him. Um, Unfortunately, he's still, my best friend. um, so what I did was like I sat down at my desk and I wrote an email, and the first I added like it's my girlfriend and like my 10 friends, and then I'm like, well, let me add 10 more people. Next thing I know, I'm adding like everyone I could had in my Gmail, just, and I said, I've let myself down so many times, but the one strength I have, I'm not good at letting other people down. I fight harder when um, it's for other people. When I was a teammate in college, the thing that always drove me was working hard for my teammates. Um, I'm a loyal person and I'm a devoted person, and so even if I didn't love myself, I loved those around me, and I figured maybe if I kind of stand up and just shout this out loud that I've got a real problem and I need to spend a long time, maybe forever, without alcohol in my body, I thought maybe that might give me a fighting chance at doing it, because I created a commitment. Like my word is my bond here. It wasn't just I'll let myself down, but I'm not gonna let you down. I'm not gonna let you down, friend, family, loved ones. Um, and that was it. I had the courage, I had the balls to put in that email. This is days after I'd been drinking almost every day for 10 years. I had the balls to put in that email. I might I might need to never have a drop of alcohol in my body again forever. So, and then just before thinking too much about it, I just hit send.
How soon was it that you got a response from your
Oh,
emails?
oh man, I remember sitting there actually. I can still remember sitting there just being like, "Whoa, boy, what did what did I just do?" Um, but I mean, it was like I just stared at the screen. I'm like, some of these people, what are they thinking? They're thinking maybe I just need to stay away from this guy forever. Like I didn't know, but no, it's kind of it's what you would hope and what you would want. I mean, I was getting responses from everyone over the next few hours or 24 hours, and hey Dave, this is the this is the best news this is the best thing you could possibly say. And just let me know how I could be there. If you want to go to the movies, if you want to go for a walk, if you want to go play ball, whatever you need to help you um, do this, I'm in. That was basically the message, and then my girlfriend. So she was there for all this. She was there with me when I went to the hospital and the 2 years preceding that, and she was there for that whole decade where I was, you know, just about to hit rock bottom. Um, and I mean, she never left my side. She knew that I don't know. Maybe she knew that I could do it one day. Maybe she knew that the person that she met was like still there somewhere. Um, and I mean, and if she hadn't, I don't think I'd be here. I'm pretty certain of that. And um, my gratitude to her will be unending. But yeah, she's the reason. She stayed with me every night, anytime I needed to talk, every night I couldn't sleep because it's weird on these, like, if you're used to drinking every night, all of a sudden nights become really long, and you're like, what do I do? What am I supposed to be doing right now? And I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just like tap on her shoulder and she would talk to me and let me know where you're good, you're okay, just one day at a time. Um, and she's that's my wife now. That's the mother of our 3-year-old child. That's she's an angel, and it's like the power of community, the power of people around you to fight through um, the darkest stuff. Is incredible.
All I can say is wow, right?
Yeah.
The power of what? Not giving up, right? So I want to ask you, back when you were at that camp
Mhm.
and you had the knife and you had you had you cut yourself or were about to cut yourself, and was your thought, I want to be dead, or I want the pain to like flow out with the blood, and not really thinking that you were going to kill yourself by doing that?
That's a great question, and it's that's a really really great question. It's one that I think about a lot still, and have tried to really understand through writing. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I was thinking. I think that my thought, the way I could best characterize it, is what you said first, that I just thought the pain would leave. I thought if something else hurt more, if my body hurt more than my mind, that I could feel better. I wasn't thinking, um, I wasn't thinking with so much like clarity in a sense of finality. I just knew that it would be better to be dead than to continue feeling this way forever. And the thing about an episode when you're depressed, let alone suicidal, and this is something that's so hard for people to understand, you don't if you're an objective observer, you can kind of look at someone and say, hey, like it'll pass, right? Like, hold on, this will be okay. This trauma will, with time, this episode you're experiencing, with time, they'll pass. But if you're in the middle of it, you truly believe that this will never end. You have no sense of an episode having a beginning, middle, of an end. You just believe. And I'd had plenty of episodes before. None were that bad as that day, but I'd had plenty of episodes before, and I knew objectively, like, yeah, these end. This is, but give it a few days. But when you're in the middle of it, you completely lose sight of that. You don't have any sense of like, okay, let's just try to calm down and let's like wait this out. That doesn't exist. That's not a real thought that you have. You just believe that you're going to feel this way forever. And at some point, start thinking, if I'm going to feel this way forever, it might just be better to not be alive. That's the best way I could describe to you how I felt at that moment.
And I'm thinking too, the thought of there's a way out of this other than death, that the problem solving part of our mind is shut down too.
No,
Like,
because I didn't know anything. I didn't know. I didn't know anything. I wasn't doing cognitive behavioral therapy. I wasn't doing any therapy. I didn't know any tools to do a reality check, um, to do any to do any self talk, to say, okay, step back. What you're dealing with right now is a symptom. It's not a reality. It's just a symptom of an illness. And I didn't have the ability to make that connection at all, and that takes years and years and years of practice. And I hadn't even started practicing. I hadn't even told anybody that I was ill. So um, I didn't have any of those tools. Just the language of it, like mental health, mental illness. These weren't like things that young men talked about a lot. They're still not. And even more so back then. It's just 20 some odd years ago. um I was like super educated. I'd gone to high school and a good college. I don't think I ever learned at any point in my life in any serious way about mental illness. um so I was just completely, it was like blindsided. I was lost. I had really had no idea what was going on. It wasn't until like I ended up at the hospital the next day, and for those next 2 weeks, that I was like, okay, well, it was a relief. I'm like, at least this thing has a name. Like there's other people that have it. There's medicine, there's doctors, there's something. And while I didn't embrace that like right away at all, it took me years and years and years to finally just become comfortable talking about it openly, telling people, yes, I have bipolar disorder. Here's what that means. I'm still awesome and I'm going to kick ass anyways, but I just have this thing that I carry with me that I treat, all good. Just like I try to think of it as like, okay, I got, it could be diabetes, it could be tendinitis. Like it's a thing that we have that we treat, and it doesn't need to be. Um, you'd never look at somebody with an injury as like weak or broken in some way. It's a thing that we treat. Um, but mental health matters are sort of have always historically been different, and some cultures, like, they're not welcome to be discussed at all. And those cultures where mental illness is so taboo and wrought with so much stigma, those places have like incredibly high suicide rates because people don't seek treatment.
in terms of mentioning not seeking treatment, in large part that can be related to stigma, right?
Mhm.
Societal stigma, self stigma. There's even health practitioner stigma and associative
Mm.
stigma, that the person, a family member, becomes stigmatized related to the person that might have, the mental health difficulty. Did you feel the alcohol right? The alcoholism or the mental health carried the greater stigma, or can you not tease that apart?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I learned to drink in college. I mean, that's where I really learned to drink, and it was totally acceptable. There, like, I'll say it was encouraged because that sort of removes the agency from me a bit, but it kind of was. I mean, there's a drinking culture in America, and particularly, like, at least in my I don't want to speak for all colleges, but my college and my college experience, it was very much a taught and learned behavior. Um, it was a behavior that was associated with fun. It was a behavior associated with, like, engaging with the other sex, and dating. It was something you did for fun. It was something you did to deal with problems. That was encouraged. There was no stigma there. Yeah, there was some embarrassment when, like, things get out of control and you wake up. I mean, I was embarrassed to call my friend one morning and tell him to bail me out of jail. Sure, but that was much more comfortable to me than telling someone, "Hey, I was hospitalized for, mental illness and I take medication." That was hard for me to say. And I'll tell you, it like that day that I stopped drinking, like, that was a new beginning, but it wasn't until even years later after that, like much more recently, like within the last, like, 5 or so years, where I actually got comfortable talking about the mental illness. Like, I still was keeping that, um, a secret, but keeping it to myself, to within my, like, very, very close circle of friends and family. Um, it took me being, like, in my mid to late 30s to say, all right, like, enough of that. I need to be, I don't need to be, but I choose to be open, and share what's going on with me, because I'm starting to realize, like, how many other people are affected by depression, by other mental illnesses, by PTSD. These are real things that are life threatening. Like, people don't think of it as life threatening enough, but, like, they really are. Um, and that was when I really became committed, not just to changing my own life for the better and taking care of myself and growing my business and doing all these awesome things that I started to do through, um, stop drinking and starting to take care of my health. Um, is when I decided, no, I want my experiences to be shared and borrowed by other people, who may be encountering or experiencing similar things, so that they can see, like, okay, there's a pathway out of this somehow. Like, it's a maze, but there is a path out of this labyrinth. Um, and so that's why I started writing. That's why I started sharing. That's why I started talking to people like you, and you. And that's why I have a book coming out. It's not to just for the sake of a tell-all. Like, it's for the sake of sharing and hoping that somebody who reads it maybe was maybe it was me, like, 20 years ago. Maybe it was someone that, um, if they have more support, if they have more voices and community around them, whether it's they're reading or they're listening or they're talking, if they're being exposed to these ideas and understanding maybe what they're going through isn't entirely unique. They're not on an island all by themselves. There are people, um, who have gone through this, come out the other side, and, um, can be, uh, a voice of support. That's what really motivated me, and that's what motivates me now, is to the pursuit of helping other people who are experiencing similar things.
David, just listening to you and the way that you're able to articulate your experiences and thinking about your memoir, I would love for your memoir to become a film. It would do so much good, you know? Yeah. And
Well,
especially, um, you mentioned about, in a sense, males conversation about mental health in particular, but the of the risk factors for suicide, there are more men that die by suicide. Now, this isn't a competition, but the fact is that there's more men who die by suicide.
That's right. Well, one thing that is a statistic I learned over the past year, which like I'll never forget because it's just so startling. This is just in the United States. Half of half of all the men who um, suffer from a moderate or severe mental illness never seek treatment. They are untreated. And half of the people um, also use or abuse substances. And I mean and I bet those overlap quite a bit. It's probably the same 50% or a large part of it. Um, because it's not easy to talk about. It's unfamiliar in some communities entirely. And when you start looking at different demographics and segments of the population, certain communities, it's almost frowned upon, and you'd be looked at with a really judgmental, critical eye. Um, and go figure, 50% of people don't seek treatment and use something else instead, whether it's drugs or alcohol or certain behavior, um, high risk behaviors, whatever it might be. Those are all things that they're keeping handcuffs. I was, and our community of people and the mental health community, we're keeping handcuffs on ourselves by not treating it. Like my life now, um, I mean, I've got plenty of difficult things I work through every day, but like my life now, there's no way I could be living this life if I hadn't sought treatment. There's no way that you can really get anything close to your like full potential and living the life that you could lead, um, if you're not practicing self-care and mental health. You can't do it. You're just you've got like you're carrying rocks up a mountain that you don't need to carry.
David, in full transparency, I want to share that when I was in medical school, I attempted suicide and was medically admitted. Full intent was to be dead. Uh, and Fortunately, I took an overdose of prescribed medication. And fortunately, my fantasy was I was just going to fall asleep and be dead. But I got very, very sick, nauseous, vomiting, ended up
Mhm.
vomiting blood, was admitted to the hospital. And I was later diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder, which is episodes of hypomania and depression. Was on Depakote and Prozac and some
Mhm.
various other medications. Depakote being it's used for different things. It's also a mood stabilizer.
Mhm.
And I was interested when you were talking about the euphoria of the mania, which can also become irritability and anger and
Mhm.
various other forms of extreme mood. But in hypomania, which is a lesser form of the mania, I would describe how I feel as that I am champagne. I feel like that. I'm champagne and the bubbles are coming off of me, right?
Mhm.
And the in a very different way than my normal personality, which is not effervescent champagne. And the depression is almost like what Coca-Cola without any bubbles at all. That's totally flat, right? So I could appreciate, for at least from my perspective too, of what you were sharing. And also, although I had shared with very few people about the bipolar disorder, I certainly never shared it in public. And it was only when I was in my 60s, I'm 72 now, it was only when I was in my 60s that I was at a conference and I ended up, somebody didn't show up for a panel. So I went up on the panel. It was a mental health oriented local conference. And I realized that the other people on the panel were sharing their personal experiences. And I just decided in a not manic way that this was my moment to share my own truth, right? And I'm so glad that I did. I feel so empowered to share my own personal story. And then it creates a connection with other people,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, and I am certain I wasn't there. I wasn't in the audience, but I am certain that somebody in that audience uh, still remembers that what you said because of something that they've gone through or something that one of their loved ones have gone through, and it brought them closer to some. It contributed in some part to their own healing or their own understanding of mental illness. And I think the more people that do that, the safer a space it all becomes. Um, where eventually, maybe it's just another thing. It's a thing that it's an affliction that people can have or not have, and it has nothing to do with our character or our personality any more than having some other chronic illness. Just a more physical, ostensible, kind of visible one that people can like better understand. And so it's wonderful that you did that, and you should be. I'm sure you are so proud of that, and it was life changing for you, and it might have also been life changing for someone who was listening.
And I'm just going to say that as a psychiatrist, right, for so many years, this is also sadly a reflection in terms of stigma, you
Mhm.
know, that
Yeah,
even in the mental health profession and workers in the field, there can be shame and embarrassment and keeping things secret. Of course, you have to be wise in how you're sharing that information. But back when I had attempted suicide, part of my reason for not wanting further help at some point was that I felt I want to become a psychiatrist. How can anybody know I could have been admitted to a psych hospital?
oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so you almost felt like it took away from your ability to be, the expert or the person that could help. Um, no, I mean, I think if anything, it probably put you in a better position to be able to do that and created so much compassion and empathy that probably make you even more, I'm sure, make you even better at it.
So, Kino, I know you've been listening keenly,
Yeah,
right?
David, I mean your story is like 100% organic, there's no filter, and I respect that. Like when you're talking, I can like see the emotion, the expression. So I respect that where you're not hiding anything, from your past, present. When you were
Not
talking
anymore.
about, yeah, not anymore, which I mean, it takes a lot. It takes a lot for someone to come out. When you were talking about drinking culture, I'm thinking about the movies such as American Pie, Project X. I mean, those were like inspirational for us growing up as guys. I can relate
Yeah.
to what you're talking about. I mean, parties, alcohol, blacking out. That was a thing once upon a time. If you did that, you were the cool guy. I felt cool. If I didn't remember what happened last night, that party at that club, it was cool. It was cool for me. And it was movies like that, that inspired me to start my first business, which was house parties, and then house parties move to halls, and then halls move to nightclubs, you know. But where I'm getting to with this is that alcohol, parties, blacking out, it's still common. And I feel like most people won't admit it, but it is an escape. Whether you think you're suffering with depression or not, is an escape. Like if you listen to people who you've worked with. I mean, we've all had day jobs once upon a time in our life. And you listen to people, oh no, I can't wait for the weekend. I can't wait for Friday. I'm going to go out with my guys. I'm going to go out with my girls, have a drink. For me, that's an escape. You're escaping from your reality. You
Yeah.
don't know it yet. You haven't brought awareness to it yet. So you have some sort of depression because you aren't happy with your Monday to Friday or your Monday to Thursday. So you can't wait. I mean, I couldn't wait. I could wait for Friday to go out and do stupid shit, you know? Like whole weekend, I'm gonna do stupid shit. It was cool. but it was also an escape. I didn't like my reality, and I'm lucky that I managed to escape it. I mean, I'm sure the two of you feel the same as well. You escape that, you realize, okay, cool. Then you start now having these flashbacks. And then you start remembering maybe it's a higher power, That's how I take it. Like a higher power is telling me, you remember that time when you were 22 and you got home, you don't know how you got home. And then there's a flashback. Then you remember actually driving, and that higher power is telling you that's what could have happened. Then you start having like this vision, of this accident, or, getting into this fight. That's what could have happened, but I was protected at the time. That's how like I feel now when I look back at those moments, doing all that stupid shit. But unfortunately, I don't want to dwell in the past. I'm glad that you managed to overcome your past. You took it on head on. You've made something of your life, and you're not 6 foot under. You're still here with us today, sharing your story that's going to inspire, that's going to motivate, educate people. I don't want to dwell
Mhm.
on my past and all the stupid stuff I did. I'm grateful to be here to share my story as well. That's going to help inspire, motivate someone else out there. But like, what can we do to get people to actually come face to face, with their reality, to be like, okay, I'm not happy here, so I'm not going to use alcohol and parties as an escape. I'm going to change this. I'm going to change the narrative of my life. Well, like, what would you advise, from your experience for people now, going through this? What can they do?
Mhm.
Instead of like, I'm waiting for the weekend, to escape from a reality that's ultimately going to lead to awareness that, look, I got depression. I mean, look at the divorce rate. I was chatting to friends of mine about the divorce rate in South Africa because we think that's an escape as well. Let me get married. That's another escape because, I haven't spent time with myself. And when I do spend time with myself, I'm so depressed about my life. So I think marriage is a solution. But in 6 months down the line, I'm divorced, But then
Mhm.
I have children, and the children are suffering because of that divorce. So, like, I want to be like, okay, what can we do to prevent this now? You know?
Mhm. Um, that's a great question. I mean, that's so okay, a couple things. Like, I think it starts with drinking culture. Like why it's kind of weird if you think about it. Like why those movies? Like why is alcohol so almost inextricably associated with high school and or college? And you left out one important movie, by the way, Animal House, which was, from like so Animal House, I don't even know if this is true, but that supposedly took place at my college. Like that was the guys that wrote it went to my school. So we always think about it as like this amazing, like rite of passage kind of thing. But if you think about it, like it's scary. It's really scary that drinking culture is so pervasive to the point where if like again, I don't want to speak for I only went to one college, so I don't know, but um it's almost weird not to drink. It's almost kind of strange to like you wouldn't really go to a party and just not drink. And if you did, people would kind of be like, you know, because you're making them
You lame.
uncomfortable. Like, yeah, like if you go out, the person that's not drinking, they make you uncomfortable if you're drinking a lot because it starts to make you question what you're doing. Like, well, is this guy not drinking? Who does he think he is? What is he like living? He's got some better life. He's doing something better than me. And so it like creates this divide because of what you said. People are drinking because of for something. And it's like it could be insecurity or it could be pain or it could be trauma. And instead of dealing with it head on, like they're drinking at least in part to help. So to see somebody not doing it, you almost feel a little bit, can almost make you feel irritated towards that person. Like, why don't you need this? Like, what's your deal? What are you just you're just able to have fun at this party? You can go talk to girls. You can go just like be yourself. I gotta hide myself, and I think that's part of the reason there's so much pressure. Like when you go to these parties in college or whatever, it's like, you join a fraternity, you do these like rites of passage and these initiations, and then by the time you're 22, you're like it can be permanently etched into your self identity and how you learn to cope with things and what you learned fun is. So like that's number one. There's some relearning that needs to happen around with young people. Um, and then the second thing I would say to answer your question, and this is really, really hard to do, but it's what I had to do. you got to like relearn how to do all these things. Like if you've never gone to, I'll use the example of like a Super Bowl, which the if you ever watch the Super Bowl on TV, it's the beer commercials are pretty much on a nonstop loop. And
Yeah.
like what we associate with watching the Super Bowl here in the States is like, I don't know, buffalo chicken wings and beer. It's part
Yeah.
of the activity. And so you have to learn how to do all that stuff without drinking. You have to learn how to like go to a restaurant without ordering wine, go to a birthday party without having a drink. And then the really tough ones, like go out to a New Year's party without having a drink. Can you do that? And um, you have to relearn all this stuff. Like I'm very comfortable now going. If my friends tonight said, hey, we're going to this bar because it's so and so's birthday. Um, well, I probably wouldn't go because it's Tuesday, but I could go and I could have a good time. But that was not always the case for many years after I stopped drinking. Like I was pretty much a recluse. Like I couldn't go and hear the sound of like a beer bottle pop, or like have that smell of whiskey or wine like waft past my face. Like I couldn't do that because it was so etched into my habits and my routine. So I had to just stay away from it and started. I used to spend a lot of nights at the gym, like Saturday night when I was really at like hardwired that this was a time that my body would get to really soak up a lot of alcohol. I would go to the gym to like because I needed to be somewhere. I had to like be distracted. So I saw those first few years. I went to the gym and I went to the movies all the time. I saw the worst movies. Every movie that came out, I saw it. Didn't matter. Like I saw some bad movies, but that was like they call it you call it a coping mechanism, whatever. It was just a way for me to relearn how to spend time. Um, so that's the second part is like we have to have the courage to relearn how to do things and relearn how to be with ourselves and just be okay in ourselves, in our own minds and bodies. And that's really hard to do if the environment around us is like always encouraging us to drink. And I have like no judgment on anyone who does drink and for drinking because I understand how hard it is to stay away from it. And look, a lot of people can really just have one or two drinks and like stop. And like that's it's fine. Like that's amazing. I could never do that. I know that I couldn't do that. That's why I had to stop because there was no other pathway. But in reality, like even if it's just 4 drinks, 5 drinks, 2 or 3 nights a week, it's taking something away. I mean, it really is. It's taking away from our ability to, it's keeping us in the shadows and keeping us out of the light where we can be our best and do our best. There's no way that if I go to that party tonight and I have let's say 4 to 6 drinks and I get home at 2 and I eat some pizza and I have a shitty night of sleep, there's no way I'm at my best tomorrow morning, right? I'm coming in to work late and I'm not making any calls or doing anything super productive till about 11. And it's the day's almost a wash. I'm lucky if I like stay afloat and like don't get behind. And if you compound that over a year. That's 52 weeks where a couple days are basically gone. Compound that over 10 years, 30-40% of your work days are less than they could be. How will you get promoted? How will you get to your next goal? How will you reach your full potential? And it's not just work, it's anything. If you want to be an athlete or an artist or a music producer or any of these things, and you approach it that way without giving all of yourself, there's no way you can look at the mirror and say I'm at my full potential even though I'm not really caring for myself as much as I could be. I'm still at my full potential. No way. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm able to say that now, but at the time, you get really good at denial. I mean, you get expert. That's the one thing you do get good at is denial, and you really can believe it's okay. Like I'm doing all these things that harm myself, but I'm still like there's no way it's derailing my career as a medical professional, as an engineer, whatever we're doing, or my hobbies. You really can convince yourself, but I can confirm that that's not true. And the reason I know that is I just look at my life. I mean, I was in my like late 20s, and I was working like multiple jobs. I was trying to get in the real estate career, but like I wasn't making enough money, so I was doing stuff on the side. My credit cards were maxed out. I didn't really have the confidence or ability to really pursue anything close to um, like my full potential at work, and the evidence spoke for itself. I was not doing good financially, um, career trajectory. I just was kind of floundering, and you know, but then my life turned around that day, and like within a couple years of that, I had like gone out on my own and started a business. And I mean, it was just me at the time, and I barely knew what the hell I was doing, but I had the ability and the drive and the energy to do it. And then, that was 13 or so, it's like 2011, so 13 years ago. Um, and now yeah, I've got an amazing company, and we've got, about 50 people, and, real revenue, and things that we accomplish on a regular basis. I guarantee that none of that could ever be possible if I was not also caring for myself in a serious kind of way. It's just there's no chance. I was not on that trajectory. And the only and I know what changed. And so I know what opened up the door for me. And it was just it broke the handcuffs off me and allowed me to, and it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be career stuff. It doesn't have to be money, business, whatever. That just happened to be the line of work that I had found myself drawn to. And it can be anything. If you're an athlete, if you're an artist, it's just, am I um, putting handcuffs on myself every day uh, by not caring for myself? Or am I approaching this with 100% conviction and um, effort? And just being able to have an honest conversation with yourself and look at, like, okay, what am I doing that's holding me back? And what can I do to reach my full potential?
That's a reality check right there.
It's a reality check. Yeah. And it's
Yeah, that's
super
a
hard to
reality
do.
check.
I mean, yeah, you don't
Yeah.
want to look in the mirror, and because as soon as you do that, you're like, shit, maybe I do drink too much, and maybe that is impacting me at work, or maybe that is making me a lesser father or husband or friend because of the behaviors that it's causing. Once you realize that, you got to make a change. So it's a hard conversation to have with yourself, because you either look at it and you're like, damn, I do need to stop. Now you got real work to do. So inviting that conversation is really hard, because you realize the truth about what you have to do.
Yeah. And you know what's the other thing about drinking culture as well? I mean, your answer to my question is perfect. It's a perfect answer. So thank you for that. Like with drinking culture, it's also transitioned into corporate companies, you know. Like I remember working for a corporate company once upon a time, actually three, and drinking culture was also part of the company. Like every Friday, you would get
Mhm.
together and you would have a couple beers. A couple beers will lead to a lot of beers. Next thing you know, you guys are in another place altogether. But that's how it was every week. So it was just part of life, or it is still part of life, out there. And that's what we're
Mhm.
attempting to change, with the answer that you have given, because each and every single one of us has a dream or wants to do something specific with our life. You know, it deep down inside. So that reality check is, why am I not living that life, or why am I not doing the things that matter to me most or that I love most? And that's why you need to self-reflect. Okay, let me cut down on the drinking. Let me stop drinking. Let me stop going out. Let me stop doing stupid shit. And that's going to make the difference. You've given a perfect answer to that. I got one more question. When you were talking about the medication, and Diana, you can
Mhm.
step in here as well. Like the medication that made you like a zombie. Like, I just want to know, like, what was the purpose of it? Like, why would they give that to someone?
Diane, you could answer that. Why would they
Yeah,
prescribe an
yeah,
antipsychotic to someone like
yeah.
me?
Yeah, like,
So,
why?
um, first, I want to say that there needs to be an accurate diagnosis, right? Defining what is the psychiatric disorder, that the person is experiencing. Um, a medicine like Risperdal, and my philosophy when I was prescribing medication, I'm retired now since 2023, but in prescribing medication, and I prescribe Risperdal and these other medications, that I would always want, one, that the diagnosis and the medication are aligned, right? That you're prescribing the lowest dosage, right, for maximal benefit with minimal to preferably no negative side effects, right? And there needs to be evidence that the medicine is actually working, right? And so I would always be advising my patients, please tell me, give me feedback, right? And especially if you are feeling worse, if you're feeling the same, and especially if you're feeling worse, please tell me, because you're now on medication and it's possible
Mhm.
that the medicine might be contributing in a negative way. So please inform me. So Risperdal can be used for psychosis meaning having auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, tactile hallucinations. It can be used as a mood stabilizing medication as well, in combination with a medicine such as Depakote or lithium or Lamictal. Risperdal has also been used to help with those diagnosed with autism, where there can be severe situations of irritability, anger outbursts, violent outbursts as well. So I'm not sure the exact reason why you had been prescribed Risperdal. Maybe, and this is just a conjecture, right? Because that was a long time ago and I had never
Mhm.
met you and I wasn't your doctor, right? But perhaps it was related to helping with the mood stability, unless you are actually having psychotic symptoms. Now, psychosis can happen in depression, in major depression, and it can also happen so there can be unipolar depression, meaning the person is just experiencing major depression, not having a bipolar disorder. And a person could be experiencing psychotic symptoms with depression. And then with mania, there also can be psychotic symptoms as well. So there could be the situation a person is being prescribed a mood stabilizer because of the up and down of their mood related to the physical disorder. We call it mental disorder, but mental is brain. Brain is part of our body. It's all a physical
Mhm.
disorder. So a person could have a bipolar disorder as well as having psychotic symptoms as part of that. And in the past, I had treated individuals who had bipolar plus the psychotic symptoms as part of it. Yeah. But I would say that if you're describing yourself feeling like a zombie, and I believe what you're saying, and it would have been perhaps better for the doctors involved to hear that, right? And to address that in terms of was the Risperdal causing you, and side effects of these medicines can be to have a person be slowed down, and you don't want that slowing down to the extent that the person is feeling foggy in their head, they can't think clearly, physically, they're damped down. That's not the purpose of the medication. The purpose of the medicine should be that there's the positive effect from the medicine, but not having negative side effects.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was, yeah, I remember like, I remember getting out of the hospital and I had this like new regiment of pills, and I was like, and I mean, they hit me all at once with these, so I don't know what was doing what. I'm just like
Yes,
trying to
right.
follow the directions and taking them. I remember just in the middle of the day being so lethargic that I just like had to stop walking, and like I would sit down on the ground. And I remember like falling asleep anywhere. I was very much like in a state of, I say zombie, like I felt like I was sleepwalking a lot. And I mean, it really, my body, I probably gained like, I don't know. I mean, 40 pounds like over the course of the few years after that. Now I had lost a lot of weight prior, just from like what my whatever was going on with me and my disorder. Like I lost a ton of weight. Um, but yeah, I gained it all back and then some very quickly. And like just I ran a lot. And like I remember the first time I went for a run after I got out of the hospital, like I couldn't move. It felt like I had never run before in my life. Felt like I was running in like combat boots. Like I just was so physically affected. Um, but I stopped taking the Risperdal like pretty soon after that. My understanding of why they prescribed it was just like, okay, given that he just got brought here and he was trying to harm himself, we're gonna like put everything, we're gonna throw it all on the wall
Yeah.
and make sure that like his personal safety is like just sort of number one. Like if that means he's kind of a zombie, okay. And then eventually it titrated down to just Lamictal. And I was taking 300 milligrams for a long time of the Lamictal plus the sertraline, um, of which I was taking, if I remember correctly, 200 milligrams. So these were very high doses. Um, but after time, and I still take a lot. I take 200 milligrams of Lamictal, which I think is on the higher end. But I mean, I think there's a lot to be said, and probably, a whole other conversation about the way psychiatric medicine is administered and prescribed, marketed, and there's a lot going on there. But I will say that I do believe that Lamictal has like helped save my life. I mean, I really believe in the medicine, and I know what my mind feels like when I don't take it. Um, and I know that it has really been a pretty essential part of my treatment. So like I'm glad it's there. Um, but yeah, I mean, the way things are prescribed, I'm sure it is probably reckless at times too. Um, but I'm here, so I'm glad that they invented whatever they invented that at least is working for me. I think
Yeah,
they
I mean,
invented Lamictal.
I would strongly say to anyone who's listening, who's on medication, psychiatric medication, especially because that's what we're talking about, but any other kind of medicine too that's been prescribed, to feel empowered to speak to that medical provider and share honestly. Share honestly, are you really taking the medicine? Right?
Yeah,
Sometimes people stop and they don't tell the provider. Are they taking it intermittently? Are they using any alcohol or substances when they're taking it? Do they think it's helping them? Are they having side effects? That to really have an open, honest conversation and to really I don't know if I'd use the word demand, but know that they have a right, that their doctor should be listening to them. And if they feel that
yeah,
they're not being taken seriously, to ask for a second opinion, because this is very important, right?
yeah. I mean,
Going
I
back to
remember.
I was just going to add that some of these medicines can cause weight gain. And that needs to be taken seriously as well in terms of side effects. But I also want to say that these medications correctly prescribed for the diagnostic illness the person has, these medicines really can be lifesavers. I've seen that
Yeah,
myself, where
yeah,
someone is so hopeless, and they have reasons to be feeling hopeless in a sense, that they've been feeling so sick for so long, that I would say to my patients, look, let's, we haven't tried everything. We are going to find the medicine, that's going to help. Now, not in all situations is medicine even the top thing to think about. In something like a bipolar disorder or major depression or OCD, medicines are, pivotal in helping. And there's also therapy to be added to that, being able to get a good night's sleep consistently, and
Yeah.
staying away from alcohol and drugs.
Yeah. And I would agree with all that. I mean, I remember talking to the psychiatrist when I moved back to San Francisco. I had to get a psychiatrist if I was going to get medicine. And you have to see your psychiatrist at like at some minimum interval or they won't prescribe it again. So to get your refills. So I would see and I saw the guy as infrequently as I possibly could. It was just enough to like for them to put the refills through. And I remember, you know, he was asking a lot about like, well, are you drinking? Are you doing drugs? And I'm like, I'm not being honest with him. I'm like, oh yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's just from time to time. It's like alcohol is a depressant. I mean, alcohol can make you feel depressed. So you're taking an antidepressant. Like, what are you treating? You got to give the medicine like a fair shot to work, which means like everything you just said. Okay, you need to actually like have a clean slate and like a somewhat healthy mind and body so that you even know what the medicine is doing. If I'm drinking every night and taking an antidepressant and I still feel depressed, like, okay, well, we don't really know what you're treating right now. You've got a substance abuse disorder and a mental illness. So we could throw all kinds of stuff at this, but um, you're not really you're not able to see the impact of the medicine. So it's like, yeah, communication with the doctor, and then also just being honest with yourself. And like, I'm taking the pills, but am I doing everything else I'm supposed to do too? I'm like, I'm not supposed to drink. I'm supposed to sleep. Um, Therapy is huge. Like, I mean, I've seen a bunch of therapists over the course of my life, and the person that I've been working with most recently um, for the past like 5 years. I mean, I, he has changed my life. He's taught me the skills needed so that yeah, I'm taking medicine, but he's helped like ingrain in me the skills that I need to a lot of what we were talking about earlier about like self-talk and reality checks and understanding like, okay, your symptoms over here, you're over here. You're not the same thing. So what you're feeling right now, disassociating yourself from it as much as you can so that you understand like, okay, there's a thing that's happening to me right now, but it's not me. So I can do a reality check. I can take a deep breath and I can say, okay, this can pass. It always does. Remember that, and understand that it's a symptom. It's not you. Um, and like he taught me a lot of that. So it's the medicine's not just in a vacuum. It's got to be it should be for best kind of results also tied to like a bunch of other treatment and self-care for it to like for any of this to even work.
David, how can listeners learn more about you? Want to share a
Um,
website address or?
yeah, thanks for asking. So yeah, I do have a book coming out, which is it's actually at the getting it's at the press right now, and like the first copies of the books will be in hand very soon. And yeah, I wrote this book um, to use my own life as maybe an opportunity for someone to hold up a mirror, and that's why it's called "I Am Someone You Know," because we are all ourselves or people that we know and care for a part of the mental health community. And I am someone you know. It just means this impacts all of us one way or another. Um, and I have a website. It's just my name.com, davidshamsad.com. Got to spell it the right way, which you could put in the link, but David DAVIDSHAMSZAD.com. And there's a sign up list for the books order form, as well as like a lot of other material on my website and links to a few podcasts I've done, um, such as this one, where I'm getting the message out.
David, before I forget, I wanted to ask you this too. Were there any family members in your immediate family, extended family, who had psychiatric illness and or alcohol or substance abuse issues?
Of course. um, yeah, my dad. Um, is an alcoholic. He's been sober himself for um, he's probably coming up on 30 years. Um, and yeah, was a really heavy drinker. So that's another place we learn behavior from too. Um, and yeah, I mean, I give a lot of credit to him. He drank a lot when we were kids, and it certainly it had a significant and at times very detrimental impact on our household. It was pretty traumatic growing up. Um, but I give him an immense amount of credit for the courage that he had. Because he learned everything he learned from his father, and he was the first person in our lineage to say, like, okay, no more. I'm stopping this for my family and for all those that come after me. Um, so when I came to a crossroads myself, I, he was another person I could look to say, okay, it's possible to do this. Like, and he drank for a lot longer than I did, so I could look at him and say, okay, I mean, he carried on this lifestyle until he was 50, whatever, and he stopped. It's possible for us to do this and for me to do the same. Um, Yeah, and so he's been sober for yeah, it's coming up on like 30 years now.
And any psychiatric illness in the family?
Well, none that has ever been diagnosed, but I would imagine that if I imagine if they were younger today, that they would probably approach their mental health differently, and that there probably are some diagnoses that people never found out about, just growing up where they did and growing up in the time that they did, um, where that might not have been like readily available.
And from a mental health awareness point of view, were there, looking back, were there earlier warning signs about your mood when you were in elementary school, high school, or did it start when you were in college, which sometimes that can happen, that the onset can be in the 20s?
Yeah, the first time I remember really feeling like, okay, maybe this is different. Um, this mood is really different. Um, was like in my late teens. Um, so like growing up, no, I mean my childhood had difficulties, and a lot of that was related to what I just mentioned with my parents and my household. But so I was pretty sad as a kid. Like I definitely remember that, but I think that was really a lot of external factors, in terms of like what I was experiencing, at being made to experience as a kid. The first time I remember feeling like I was out of my mind, like something different was happening in my head, was like, yeah, probably when I was 19 or 20.
Any final words for us, David?
Well, I've said a lot of words. I hope not too many, but no, just yeah, it's just I think that the lesson that I always do my best to impart on people when I have the opportunity is just it's just that conversation that you need to have in the mirror about what you're doing, and whether it's giving you your best shot to live your fullest life, uh, breaking the handcuffs that are on you, whatever they are, and that can be, are you seeking treatment for an illness you have? Are you getting help with what you need? Are you taking the steps to take care of yourself, um, to fight whatever it is you're fighting? Um, because that's really the only way you'll get to step out of the shadows and live the life that you're most capable of living.
David, it was really an honor to meet you. Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much.
much for
I just
joining
want
us.
I just want to say one more thing, like what you just said there now about getting the help. Unfortunately, people don't know how to get help, or they can't afford to get help. So we're also dealing with that in the mix of trying to
Hmm.
prevent suicide and deal with mental illness. You know, we look at society, we look at middle class upwards, they aware,
Hmm.
they got the
Right.
guidance, someone can advise them, maybe they have parents, they have family. When we go down to the lower class, and I mean, we don't know the numbers, I don't know the numbers, they don't have all of that. So, I mean, and the suicide rates there is also just as bad as up there,
That's right.
but there's no attention, and they definitely not going to get the attention from any government department, you know, any authority. It's not there. Of course, there is NGOs that are out there, but unfortunately, they don't even know how to get a hold of those NGOs as well, or feel that that
Yeah.
is the right thing to do, direction to go. And I don't
Well,
have the
that's why
answers.
there's
Unfortunately, I don't. I'm just mentioning it.
yeah, that's more people like you. It's just more people like you um, that are making this message available and making yourself and your own expertise available as a resource. Seeing this conversation is free. Getting on your guys' website is free, and more people like you continue to do what you're doing, and more people like it joining this fight. Um, it's just that's the way. Just continuing to make this conversation a conversation to bring it out into the forefront. Because you're right, it absolutely impacts certain communities more than others. I mean, there's
Mm.
conversations about mental health happening all the time now in certain schools, in certain communities. Um, and in other communities, it's completely off limits. It's still taboo. So it just
Yeah,
takes this
yeah,
continued, steady, applied pressure. More people sharing, more people making resources available, more people talking, writing, um, posting. Um, we can make this like village much, much bigger, I think.
yeah. Yeah. And it's also
And
hard, for like children in a school to take mental illness serious if the teacher is not taking it serious,
Oh, yeah,
depending,
absolutely.
where your school is situated. Because if the teacher is not taking it serious or not emphasizing the importance of it, the kid is going to be
Hmm.
like, ha ha ha, whatever, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, some
Next thing you
schools
know, they
have
committed
mental
suicide.
health counselors. Some schools have an entire staff or multiple staff just dedicated to mental health and being a resource. And like, go figure, those schools are ones with more resources and in places with more affluence. So it's not an equal playing field by any means.
Yeah.
I'll shout it loud and clear. Here in the US, call 988, right?
Hmm.
You can call them, you can text them, there's chat, they're available 24/7.
Yep.
Therefore, suicide, and also it's a crisis lifeline number. And they can help hook you up with other services in your community.
In
So
South
thank
Africa,
you
call
again,
Kino. I'll look
David.
you up with Diana. I don't trust our numbers here.
Well, thank you guys so much for having
Yeah,
me. I
thanks,
really
man.
appreciate it, and continue to do the work you're doing. It's amazing.
Let us know,
Yeah, thank
David,
you
when your
also.
book is out, because
I
we'll
will.
post about it.
Awesome. I'll send you guys an email soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
David. Yeah, bye. Okay. Here we go.